the origins of this movie started about 10 years ago. One of the things that I do when I'm researching and gearing up to write is collect a whole lot of images, put together lookbooks. Louise and Jarin both probably got a lookbook and a script early on.
There's a whole book, and then each of us, or certainly for me, I'll connect with whatever, 5 especially, and then I'll go branch out and find my own stuff and I'll feed it back.
It sort of invades your mind to the point that I can be walking around a museum and I'll send stuff.
If you hire people crazier than yourself, you seem like a very responsible director.
You're crazy inside, Rob, and then you throw it all over the screen. Movie.
Hey everybody, this is Josh Apter from Manhattan Edit Workshop, where we're dedicated to teaching not just the tech of editing, but more importantly, the art of editing. And to that end, we love to talk with creative professionals about their process. It's always informative and inspiring, and it really gives us a deeper understanding of all the hard work and the artistic choices that go into making a great film. Now, if you're new to the channel, please make sure to like our videos, hit subscribe, let us know how you feel in the comments. You know how to do it, I'm sure by now. Today we've got something between a Talking MEWShop podcast and a Sight, Sound, and Story episode, so I'm not really sure what it is, but I know it's really interesting. I'm joined by director Robert Eggers, cinematographer Jarin Blashcke, and film editor Louise Ford to talk about their new film, Nosferatu. Now, they've been collaborators through many, many projects, and we'll discuss the unique challenges around their latest film, as well as what it's like for them to work as a team for well over a decade. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Curious about creating high-quality YouTube videos? Enroll in video editing and production classes at Manhattan Edit Workshop to sharpen your skills and turn a hobby into a career. Start your journey to becoming a pro today.
I'll welcome you guys. Robert, Louise, and Jarin, thank you so much for joining us today. Fresh off of watching Nosferatu, so it's like you scared me, which is hard to do. And I was like, fuck you guys. Like, I was really like, how'd you do? I was very impressed at the ability to sort of like immediately, because I'm watching it, I'm watching the sort of like the attention to craft kind of coming around a character and changing the sort of the way that the camera's moving from a perspective to a profile to suddenly like you're just like boom. I mean, maybe you guys feel like it's easy, but I was taken. And
that you know, obviously, you know, there's a lot, like it's a technique in horror movies to have like a jump scare in a prologue, so that then you're, you know, on your toes for the rest of the film. And but that's a nice one because it is a jump scare that you don't know how it's going to arrive, you know, and whereas, you know, we have several very traditional jump scares where you know exactly how, when, why, what, but it's, you know, and that's satisfying in its own way, I hope. Too.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly found it to be, but I also feel like, you know, and this probably echoed in some other people's statements or reviews or things that, you know, you're creating an atmosphere that's really difficult to like ground yourself in. And that helps the whole thing feel to have a tension that like it really just exists over the arc of the story. Is like, I don't want to call it dread, but there's like this movie vibrates in a really strange way where, you know, you're behind someone, through someone, in front of somebody, you're going, you know, around it. So it's like, yes, there are times when you're definitely in perspective of a character, but there are times when you are like, we're in a spirit world and the perspective is like of this thing that is kind of taking over. So the movie sort of takes you over, and that feeling, you know, sort of covers your experience of watching it. It certainly did for me.
I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, well, I hope there was some intent. I guess I want to talk about that because, again, you've worked together on a number of different projects. I'm assuming there's a bit of a shorthand in the way you communicate, you know, and an evolution about how you work and collaborate. You know, there's a lot of intention in this movie. So you know, I guess let's talk about that from the origins of wanting to make it, which I guess was, you know, Robert, when you were like 10 or 12 years old. I mean, this is an early passion for you that has persisted throughout, you know, number of films and sort of culminates here. But, you know, when you first said, I think this is something I'm going to do, what was it like, and how did you communicate it to your team here? Like, when did this first start to spin up with the three of you?
Yeah, like this movie and not any other sort of origin stories about Nosferatu that you know, if anyone wishes to do a cursory Google, I'm sure they can find quite easily. The origins of this movie started about 10 years ago. And and you know, one of the things that I do when I'm researching and gearing up to write is collect a whole lot of images. And so then the next thing I do with those images is start to put together lookbooks. And so Louise and Jarin both probably got you know, a lookbook and a script or you know, early on because I wanted their input, you know.
Yeah, it's probably a lot of times it's a lookbook before a script. I don't know if that was necessarily the case here, but I feel like, you know,
Probably that's something that happens to you more than my other collaborators.
okay, sure.
Yeah, and they usually come together. I'm trying to remember when, probably after The Witch, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we had a lookbook for The
I,
Witch.
I was working on a medieval movie
Yeah.
that I pulled the plug on because it was clearly
right. Yeah.
gonna work out, and then pivoted to Nosferatu.
Lookbook's great because it's like a filter in which to read the movie. I mean, after a while, I know Rob well enough that, you know,
Right.
so, and it's cool to have, you know, a little input too. Like, oh, you know, maybe there's a whole book, and then, you know, each of us, or, you know, certainly for me, I'll connect with whatever, five especially, and then I'll go branch out and find my own stuff, and I'll feed it back, and then it becomes this dialogue through pictures, you know. So, and then there's the movie list that I get, you know, that's like massive. So I'll
Watch all of these movies.
I always when I send him a watch list to Jaron, I always make sure to put the 5 most important ones on top because he probably won't get past the first 3. So you know, that's fine.
It's a little better than that, but I know that like some of them I'm trying to interpret, like, what is the thing, like what was that, usually it's like some Russian handheld movie that I'm just like, what am I trying to get out of this? And then you have to, you know, like, oh yes, obviously it's handheld, Jaron. You don't, you know, you're not looking at that. Like, just look at the blocking
Right.
overall.
And
You know,
with me,
you got to qualify it, you know.
I'm more like, I'll read the script, you know, the lookbook obviously gets you to the world. But again, we've been working together for nearly 20 years now. We first worked together on a short film called The Telltale Heart, you know, the Edgar Allan Poe story, but that was 2007.
2008.
I'm looking for Lou to already start the editing process when I send her my scripts, you know, to start honing the story and telling me where there's flab and
also that it sort of invades your mind to the point that I can be, I mean, I know I've done this to you loads of times, Rob. I'll be walking around a museum or go to an art gallery or something, and I'll send stuff. But it's not really to do with editing. It's more to do with just, isn't this cool? This is like, you know, the world. I remember when we went to a museum, I can't remember where it was, but the goblet that is in that scene with all that, there's the original, there was, you know, authentic ones of, anyway, whatever. It's like a two-way.
Yeah, and
It's a two-way street to a certain extent, you know, just you become enraptured in this world because it's so beautifully written and imagined with the lookbook that it just starts, it seeps into your everyday life. Well, that's my experience anyway.
yeah, it's an infection.
Everything through that lens for a bit. Yeah.
So it's in the writing. I mean, like I described watching it and having that experience. You're saying that the lookbook and the screenplay is where that initially exists. I mean, it's from the beginning.
I think so. I mean, what do you guys think?
I mean,
Yeah,
I fucking hope so.
but there's also like there's also four at the going on at the same time, like always, because Rob never knows what's gonna go. So
yeah, that's true.
So the
Yeah.
Northman was relatively
there's multiple, like, as I started the journey of Nosferatu, I've been saying 10 because it's so convenient, but it is actually 9 years ago. Well, it'll be 10 years ago in a couple months, actually, but whatever. I could see that it was not going to come together. So I also started working on The Lighthouse with my brother, and so yeah, there's always multiple scripts going around until we see what like the studio wants to order. And yeah, but also, I mean, I'm very glad that it didn't happen 10 years ago. I've grown a lot as a person and as a filmmaker, and the collaborations with Louise and Jarin and Craig and Linda, all the creative heads of departments, we become more fluid, we become further extensions of each other. That quote unquote shorthand like gets better, and as we are further extensions of each other, we get to challenge each other more, and it makes it so that everyone is like inspiring the other person beyond what they can imagine alone, and then making then you can go beyond, you can go beyond your initial preconceptions of what the film could be.
And I'd like to say that Rob is so very good at choosing his collaborators. I mean, everybody's at the top of from my point of view, everybody's at the top of their game. So that's a challenge I've got to keep up. We're all trying to keep up with each other. That's what I feel like. And we've all, grown the more films that we've done. It's great to work with such a talented, hardworking. I got told off for using talented when I was talking to a friend of mine who's a sculptor, and he was just like, it's not talent, it's hard work. Anybody can have talent.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to have all of it. Something you're going to limit yourself if you're not. You got to have taste and talent and technique. You need all of it. So
if you're lucky enough to find something that you just really enjoy doing, it's not work anyway, right?
Well, it doesn't feel like work as much, but it's not. I'm sure all of you worked very, very hard to get this piece to where it is.
Yes.
But that's the thing, that the fact that the collaboration is that you guys are so tight, and that you can challenge one another, and the sort of ego drops out, but the way that bringing the story to fruition, like give that, like basically making it the best thing it can be, becomes the goal for everybody.
The work is the master,
Yeah,
right.
And I would bring that back to the script as well, just to say that we all, Jarin, Linda, Craig, Damien, the sound designer, we're all, so enraptured with we want to do the best job possible because the script is so good. And you were talking about the atmosphere. Yeah, if it isn't in the script, you can't fix that. It has to start there.
A big thing for me is just my favorite resource is time, because it's 4 months to come up with an idea is always better than 4 minutes or 40 minutes or 4 hours. It's like it has to. I think on set, I find if it's a movie where I'm just sort of reacting, then I'm always reaching for the low fruit. It's like we're all challenging each other, but also it's like, what is challenging each other to find the unexpected? Like the camera moves the way it does because audience expectations were thought about thoroughly. They're going to expect this here. Well, let's not give it there. Let's just make it off a little bit. We're going to pan from here to here. Just, we're not going to follow action at all. Fuck following action. We're just going to, the camera's going to do it at once, and it's going to, you're going to expect it here. And it's these little things add up and make it uncanny, hopefully,
Yeah. Well, it feels like it almost was like, I don't want to say it was like it wasn't crafted by people, it has a feeling like, because it's a period piece, it's like, and you can tell me if like you're working within a certain set of rules, right? Like, handheld camera doesn't happen. The moves are not so pronounced that they call attention to themselves. Like it would kind of, I don't know, imply technology in a way that doesn't fit the time and place of the film. The color scheme is very muted and faded. Like it's just everything about it feels like this environment you're creating in the way that it's edited, right? There's not like a lot of very few. I mean, I'm sure you didn't count how many total edits there are, but there's not a lot of cutting in this film, nor does there need to be.
No, I mean, even in the scenes where it is shot reverse shot and like Louise keeps it simple,
Mm-hmm.
I would
Yeah, well,
like to challenge that there's not a lot of editing in this film, though, because
well, there's not a lot of.
I just mean a lot of edits. Yeah, I'll preface by saying years ago there was I guess one of the Academy Awards where like one of those Bourne Ultimatum, like one of those movies won over what I thought was a sure winner was gosh, what was it called? The assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford.
Dylan Tickner, I spoke to him this morning.
Beautifully edited film, lost to the most edited film.
But
and I was just like,
that's always the way. But it depends what you mean. If you're talking edits as in cuts, sure, but editing is not just that.
No, I think yours are they're the right choices. There needn't be a ton of editing, a ton of edits to make the editing work in this film. I don't mean to mislead you. I'm not saying, but it doesn't seem, I guess none of the style, none of the construction seems overpronounced is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's lots of editing in those oneers that you don't see.
Yeah, we should take it as a compliment because so much of our work is invisible. You know what I mean? So I think that there's you guys edited for a while. There's a ton of work there, and
I had a producer on one film say to me once when I was asking for some overtime, he's like, "You're shooting single camera, and it's a load of oneers. Why do you need more time?" And I'm like, you don't, it's like easier to cut a film with coverage because you can manipulate the pacing to a much greater degree. Like scenes in themselves work beautifully and it looks beautiful, but then you're looking at the movie as a whole. And also even within a scene, the pacing needs to be manipulated in certain ways. But yeah, hopefully, I'm glad that it's invisible. Like Angela, our visual effects supervisor, producer, supervisor. What's her title, Rob? Supervisor. She's always like thankful that people are like, there's barely any visual effects in the movie. Well, of course, there's tons and tons of them, but it's the best compliment if you think there isn't any. And likewise for the editing.
It's a film that I've seen that I wanted to talk about specifically. Maybe I don't know if you recall it. It's like Ellen's Big Confession, and her husband's in the background, and she's sort of kneeling, and she stands and comes into focus. They have part of this conversation looking at each other, but she's right, he's left, and they're talking, and things completely shift because he doesn't know the true nature of what vision she's been seeing and how deep they run. They switch positions, and it seems like a big fulcrum point in the scene. And there was something.
The camera move when it comes around.
Camera comes up and around, establishes a line of sight, but then the characters change it. It's almost like she basically takes control over the scene because of what she's about to reveal. It seems like in most cases I'm sort of like in good hands. I trust that I've seen enough of the film that I'm like, all right, I don't have to worry about is something going to not ring true or something like what's going on. Like you lay out a very confident case for shaping a story. And so I see something like that. To me, it's very interesting and seems very intentional. But maybe it's just
Yeah,
you
I mean,
guys.
yeah, obviously when we're breaking the rules, like there's, it's not just, it's not by accident.
I like to hear when somebody says that you felt confidence, because I think that's always a great moment when you go to the cinema and in the first 5 minutes of the movie, you just go, oh, okay, this is going to be good. And then you can just relax.
Yeah.
I was
that
gonna say,
is-
yeah, you can just relax.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so thanks.
Yeah. You don't feel that always. I will say, I'm not, this isn't like we're not going to criticize other movies, but it's true. Like, when you see it, when you're like, all right, I'm in good hands. Like
Yeah,
I'm good.
That's great. That's when.
Mhm. Yeah, I did. The only thing to me, of course, was the carriage door opening, and I'm like, well, now I would run. I would leave. I don't care what his mission is or how much he wants to get ahead of his job. I would turn the fuck around. I would run as fast as I can. Clearly, that can't happen, but
it's also, I feel like but at that point we're in dream logic, and if you notice that he sort of is like sucked into the carriage, and then there's no footsteps. So it's it's when you're in a dream and you're going towards the thing you don't want to go towards, but you have no like control over your bodily functions, that's the
Mm.
It's funny
No,
that you said that, though, Josh, because my memory of first seeing the Murnau film is watching it with my mom, and when he when he appears in the doorway at the big, when Hutter gets to the castle, she always used to say, "My feet wouldn't touch the ground." I'm not going in there.
Well, he's compelled here. I think
I guess that's the same moment, really.
yeah, similar. But he's also at a big literal crossroads.
Yep.
There's no going back. And I know you don't want to talk about how you lit the scene at night and blah, that's,
No,
but
I'm happy
okay.
to, but yeah,
I
but it's
love the
appropriate.
snow. Like, honestly, that I'm looking at going like, how, there's so many things where I sort of going, how did you light this? How'd you get this from the Roma village scene? I'm like, I guess must have been lights, but it just is very well portrayed to be practical or sunlight or moonlight. And I know it's never that simple, but
Yeah, it's not moonlight.
no, and it's not candlelight probably. And
No, it is.
It is candlelight. It is
that's all candlelight.
If it's an interior scene, it's all artificial daylight. Yeah, obviously we're lighting moonlight, and I mean, a crossroads is kind of a perfect place to do moonlight because it's contained, so we're just trying to find that thing where it's like not it's close enough to where it feels claustrophobic, but it's not so close that I can't light it anymore, so it's just that perfect opening that we have, and I only need to put fill light where there's an opening in the sky, so which is what.
But you spent a lot of time finding that location, didn't you, Jarin? I mean, when I
How many did we look at, Rob? Was it like 8?
I don't know. We looked at a lot of crossroads, and then of course we found there's one that I got really excited by, and Jaren's like, yeah, it does look good, but I can't light it because the trees are so dense that I'm not going to be able to get any light in there, So, so yeah, it took a while.
Yeah. Or like it's not a perfect crossroads. It was like that, or
A lot of that.
you look one way or the other, or you didn't have access for the lifts. We had a crossroads, but beyond that crossroads, there's 2 crossroads in one direction and then 2 crossroads the other way, and so we're driving lifts in and then arm out over, over the tree line, and it was very tedious, and we did it twice because the first time we were grounded for wind. So,
oh my gosh. Well, a question is, how hard do you fight for the thing that you want? In an instance like this, it's certainly effective, but it wasn't exactly, or is it that in the sort of in the collaboration, it gets better, it turns into something else?
You fight as long and hard as you can, and there always are some things that like, you don't love and don't quite ring your bell. This is the first movie though that there's nothing horrible in it for the like there's 2 shots that aren't great, but they're so brief that it's like I don't have to like marinated, and also they're not terrible. They're just not
Right.
you
At
know.
the same bar, maybe.
What's
Yeah.
that? Not
Of
the
the
same
same.
bar. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
And
think, and it's a testament to like Louise and Angela Barson, you know, that we kind of made sure that like everything, like we got all the T's crossed and I's dotted for things that were not quite working. But I mean, you know, there's in the Murnau film, uh, Ellen visits, Ellen's on the beach, like with some sand dunes, like you know, sort of pining for Hutter or Orlok, we don't really know. And so we were originally scouting northern Germany, like looking for beaches. And then it would seem like it was too expensive to go there. So then all now we're stuck in the Czech Republic and it's landlocked and there's no beaches. And this became very disturbing. But then I sort of was thinking about it and realized that, well, if you were in a northern German town, you wouldn't actually be close to any of like beaches like that. And in fact, like you would be more likely on an estuary anyway. So all of a sudden this like issue that we didn't have a beach was like maybe okay because we can have like we can find a lake that can with a little help from visual effects can become an estuary, but even still we couldn't find a good fucking I mean I don't know how many it was,
yeah,
and it was
how many days driving, you know, and we still didn't.
insane. And then we finally found a lake that no one really liked, but it was kind of the like the least evil of everything. And
There's one that I
Craig,
liked a little better, but you liked worse, you know,
sure.
the day camp one, you know, that you hated.
Right. Yeah, I hated that place. The Cowabunga Beach Party.
But the way it was shot, you wouldn't have seen it.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
then but then Craig Lathrop, the production designer, and the Greens team brought sand dunes into the location and put the iron grave markers of the sailors lost at sea and all that shit. And we come into the location the night before and we're like, yeah, I guess we'll make you work, you know, whatever. And then we find out the next morning that the location's flooded and that we've lost like the majority of the shoreline that we were planning on using. And if Craig hadn't brought in the sand dunes, like we would have lost the entire set because those sand dunes were kind of holding back a little bit of runway for the actors to perform on. And you know, like if this had happened earlier in the shoot, I would have been like, let's pull the plug and get the fuck out of here. But we were already behind because of like the wind grounding the lights and the crossroads and some other issues that arose. So all of a sudden, like it's like let's strap in and make this work. Also, I was like insistent that we only shoot overcast, and it was like a mostly sunny day. So we're there like dying, like waiting for cloud cover, you know, and it was just a fucking nightmare. But you know, in the end, I think it looks pretty good. And I like the scenes, you know, but it was you know, I was just making movies, I guess.
You're always going to see it for all of that, right? Like you have all of that baggage that all I see is something that's like part of the whole.
But I think the work that I did with, you know, that Louise and I did with the editing and particularly the dialogue editing in that sequence that Angela did to have some sky replacements, like and some other things like all, you know, and the score, but and the sound design. All, you know, I don't think about all the horrible stuff when I watch those scenes. I actually enjoy it. I think we succeeded, but it was when we left that location, I was like, well, those scenes are fucked. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, everything. Yeah, I mean, it was really hard. You guys got there to shoot, and it was just a disaster. And then you had to, Jarin, you had to block it like completely differently than how you'd originally planned it, right?
No, it was the same. We just like there's like a little bit more between the dunes, and a little more cramped by the dunes, and you're seeing less
And
of.
we're also in like the crews like all in waders like in the water like shooting everything, and the like and we had to bring in like steel deck to like give the actors like a little again like a little more runway so that they can like not be drowning in the sea.
Yeah, it's quite. I'd forgotten all that.
Were
I'd
you there,
forgotten.
Louise?
Yeah,
When you
I wasn't on location when they were shooting that. I was on location in Prague, but I'd forgotten how much work that scene was.
Yeah.
You just brought it all back to me. The dialogue. Oh yeah.
Sometimes you do have to insist on stuff. Like Knox cell was going to be like a cell that we built on this location, and then it just kind of was this creeping gnawing thing. I was trying to make it work, and it had this location with like a window that was sort of dictated by the location, and I did these drawings and graphics and figured out that I'm definitely gonna have a camera shadow all over it. Plus, the shape of it's not right. We had to have to move a wall, like shoot one way and then move like a set wall back to get the other way. And so in the end, if you insist on certain things, we ended up making that a small set. So
I mean, but Bernie Blue, our line producer, was really great and really
Yeah.
got the picture, and he understood the film we were trying to make, and so and was able to kind of like evolve along the way. I think I remember when we were doing camera tests when he like brought in um the accountants to say like this is what we're spending money on. Isn't it cool? I've never seen that before. And and so as he can like he heard we talked about the approach obviously for months. We prepped the movie, he saw the sets being built, he saw things going, but as we began to shoot, like certain things like made themselves clear. Like eventually he was like, okay, I see how it's all going. We will have to build Noxel on stage. Like that is the only way to do it their way. And I also remember we ran out of money to build the ship, and and the ship went from this big to this big. But then I kept talking to Bernie, and Craig kept talking to Bernie, and the ship kept growing almost back to where the size that was too expensive, but he also knew why, so he was willing to like to figure it out, and he'd be like, Rob, you really need your rental car? I mean, you know, I don't know that you really need your rental car. And it's like, well, if that it helps with Knox Cell, then I don't,
Did you ride horseback to set every day?
Yeah, I hitchhiked. Yeah.
Okay. At least you got there. It's not, I don't know if it's an added expense, but worth the budget. And I've heard this only happen a few times. And I guess, but the reason I was asking if you were there, Louise, also is because the score, it's not that common to have the music written early on in the process, but from what I understand, you did, and your composer, Robin.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have the whole score. He wrote a few demos, and
Right.
just a few demos, and so those were played among also with some Spotify playlists of a lot of other people's work.
Mhm.
Played that on set because for the Northman and Lighthouse Witch, we were like out in the middle of fucking nowhere, and so like the atmosphere of being on the side of a mountain with like the rain pissing in your face like does the trick, and you don't need music. But when you're shooting like 97% on a sound stage, like having music, and Damien also had some sound design he created early on.
Mhm.
But those also helped with the director's cut, because by the time like Louise did the assembly mostly with just sound design, very little music at all,
Mhm.
which was a really evocative way to like first understand the film. And then but then by like Robin did so much composition early on, like he did the first reel and most of the major set piece scenes for the director's cut. And then like and so as we were preparing for preview screenings, test screenings, like Neil Stemp, the music editor, and I were able to like pull stems from from all the stuff that Robin had done and layer that into the temp stuff, so that it all felt like a piece very early on, which was cool, you know. And it also yeah, it was, I mean, the one great thing about aleatoric music is that you can just smash it all together and it sounds bad and no matter what, so it always, you know, works.
Mhm. I know. Was that helpful, Louise? I mean, or is it would you cut with anything? And although the sound
No.
design, I mean, you could talk about that too. The sound design's very present, as is the music.
I mean, it's incredibly helpful to have the music early. And yeah, Damien did it, cut us, like gave us a sort of atmosphere type track, just you know, what do you call it, droning, sort of humming, sort of just weird interior castle sound, which is good. But I also, yeah, I can't cut without good sound. Like I have my assistants, you know, do sound passes on scenes when I'm cutting a scene or a sequence, and then I have the assistants, you know, put in spot sound, whatever, you know, doors, whatever, creaking, whatever you want to call it. And it just, but mostly, I mean, I think what I remember most about cutting Nosferatu before we had all the music and everything was that sequence when he gets to the castle with the doors opening and we first see Orlok, and I cut that with a bunch of these there's a sound designer called Alan Spillett, who was David Lynch's sound guy, who recorded a bunch of these acoustic, or not, what do you call it, acoustic, sorry, analog sort of sound. Made this huge library of, I think in Chicago in the 80s, there was lots of factories, and he would go to the factories at night and record the humming of the machinery and all this kind of stuff like that. None of it's digital, it's all sort of analog. So I've got a whole library of these sort of different pitches, hums and drones and, you know, voices and stuff. And I kind of I use different pitch, different tones to kind of compose a sort of a soundtrack, if you like, to that sequence, just to get us into the castle. I love doing that. I probably shouldn't spend as much time doing that stuff as I do, but it just helps so much with the atmosphere. And
well, I mean, Lou could have been a sound designer or a music editor. Like, she has a really good like understanding of that stuff, and it becomes really helpful too, because a lot, you know, Robin's composing these like incredibly fucking like challenging really complex musical pieces, and you know, and Neil Stemp's the music editor is trying to like keep up with the edit, and sometimes, you know, like Lou needs to come in to like to do it, to make sure that like it gets the story beats smack on whatever, you know, hits the story beats correctly, you know, basically.
Yeah.
Even if it's a little funky and then it needs to be cleaned up and or recomposed, like, you know, sometimes like Lou needs to be the one to do it.
I mean, I guess coming from low budget indie filmmaking, you know, where we all started off, but you know, as the picture editor, I just do that because I really enjoy doing it as well. But you know, as we've gone up in budget, then you know, we get brilliant people like Neil to do the music editing. Robin obviously is composing while we're shooting, and Damien sound design. What are you laughing at?
We're all obsessive. Neil's very obsessive.
Yeah, it's true.
I met his wife for the first time, and she was like, "I'm glad that Neil's working with you. You two deserve each other."
Yeah, we're all, I mean, it's great. And we'll, you know, and Robin and I get on great, the composer, you know, we're all kind of friends at this point. And
yeah, but none of
we'll
us are
help
that easy, you know. And we're all kind of have our own difficult in our own unique way. I mean, Craig's definitely the easiest of us, but you know,
Sure.
Lou's got her thing, I have mine. Damien has his,
If you
Robin has his.
if you hire people crazier than yourself, you seem like a very responsible director. That's
Yeah,
what I.
you're extremely diplomatic. Jesus,
You
Mm.
just
around
keep your
all that.
crazy inside, Rob, and then you throw it all over the screen every time you make a movie.
Now so you're talking about analog sound effects that you were using. I'm
I
assuming
don't
you're
know whether
cutting.
that's the right word. They're not digital.
They're not digital, but you talked about shooting on film. I'm assuming you're not cutting on a moviola. Good, thank God. But there's something about, because there's something about the way they were recorded, maybe the quality of that sound and the quality of the photochemical process in shooting on film and not digital. Is there something where you've sort of become like-minded in that regard, where there's something you want to, kind of, it's such a synthesis of traditional. I mean, these are period. I don't know if it has anything to do with the fact that this is a period piece.
It's interesting to me because sometimes I think you get what we're doing. It seems to me very clearly that you get what we're after and what we're doing. Sometimes people say, "Oh, it's interesting, like the modernity of the filmmaking, like it's so like now or whatever." And it's like, well, no, like you can see the exact same kind of staging in like a Universal Sherlock Holmes movie with Basil Rathbone, like from the 40s. But like we just have better camera support, so it's not as wobbly. But it's the same thing, I think.
Yeah.
I think that the size, like Dolby Atmos or even the 5.1 or 7.1 or 5.1 fold downs, like that is where I think, even though we are going for a more like there's no electronic sounds, everything is like or an organic sound, even all the drones that were used in the film, not just the ones that Lou used on the assembly to guide the sound design, but it's the sort of scope and scale of the sound that I think gives it more of a modern feeling. If you like, no one should ever do this, but if you did like replace Throne of Blood with a Dolby Atmos like sound design and mix of the soundtrack, it would be a completely modern feeling movie. And and part instead of just having like one wind sound and like one with like the sounds of the hoofbeats of a horse, and that's it, like but yeah, I think we're after something that feels a little classical, and like there's not even like there's no handheld, there's not even any Steadicam allowed,
That was so satisfying to
or
not.
shame Steadicam.
So that was
What's that?
satisfying. So that's like, there is like, you did install some formalist approach, which is no Steadicam, no handheld. I knew there was no handheld, but so what were the toys that you were giving yourselves to play with?
It's
Crane and Dolly.
Yeah, crane and dolly, because usually the dolly is used to find a static shot. When we have it, you can be more precise. It's like usually it sticks. It's like, oh, let's go up a little, and they go one leg at a time. I'll stop there, but then you level it after you say stop there. That makes it a little higher, and like, back down.
And Jarin's lighting is such that like if the camera's like a couple inches off, like it can be a problem.
Oh, really? It's like right out of frame.
The grip aspect of the lighting, it's like it's not on in the
There's
frame,
yeah, they're like if
it's on the ceiling and the wall and white.
If it's a moonlit interior, you're gonna, by God, there's no motherfucking lights in the room. Like, like the light, the lights are coming through the windows, but there's grip frames.
There's white,
all over the fucking place.
Right. Well, I mean, in terms of the, being on a dolly or a crane, it did, and I'm not sort of trying to say anything more about Spielberg than need be said, except people talked about that shot on the ferry in Jaws that is an entire scene in one shot.
Yeah.
including
I
a
mean,
number of different close-ups. And this has this economy that way where you block a shot that moves and it can turn into an entire, little
yeah.
mini 3 act
I mean,
structure in one shot.
I still will come up with shit that's ripping off Spielberg to this day. You know what I mean? Or sometimes just the feel of a close up of at a certain angle like
Yeah.
that. And then that's just a Spielbergian right there. So
You just made this zoom Spielbergian.
just at
Thank
a
you.
certain lens at a certain distance. So it's you can pull from Tarkovsky to pop. So it's all it all can have a place.
Right. So there aren't any no-fly zones in terms of influences and references, obviously.
Yeah,
It's
is
just
it classy or not? You can get it from anywhere.
I mean, it seems like you guys, the movie's like obviously not, little happy ending type of, story, but you guys have clearly are enjoying yourselves with the work that you do. It's great. It feels that way. This thing is like, it definitely sucks you in and leaves you like, I'm still haven't really shaken it. You just kind of like have to come down off of this feeling that you've created, but it speaks to something, I mean, it's silly to say congratulations guys, but like it's really strong. And I mean, I think it's funny because I saw the film I thought Willem Dafoe was going to be the vampire because I saw him in Shadow of the Vampire, so I just assumed. And it was such a complete, like, my expectations were, really, this kind of blew my expectations out of the water.
If it
But I don't
leaves
know.
people with something like it left you with something, that I think I really like it when a movie does that to me. If I'm still thinking about it a couple of days later or it pops back into my head, something, it's not just you go to the cinema, you watch the movie, have a good time, you leave, that's it. And then you never think about it again. I mean, that's a great kind of movie too. That's a different type of movie, and I can enjoy those movies too. I'm not a snob, as Rob and Jarin know. I'm not a snob, but
Well,
I'm not. You're
takes one of
way
us.
more,
Right.
yeah, you're way more snobby than I am. I'll watch anything, but yeah, but the ones that stay with you, that's the ones I want to work on, and Rob's always do that. I think. They always, because there's psychological depth there. It's not just, there's a story, sure, but it's what's going on, it's what's going on psychologically between all the characters, and it makes you inevitably think about your own life and your own relationships with your family or your, loved ones, whatever.
Vampires.
The people, yeah.
Right, exactly. All my vampires. It's making me rethink all of them. No, it's great to be like I even like it sometimes when I don't like the movie and I think about it because that means I've had a reaction to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because so much of the time it's out of your head by the time you're out of the theater. You're like, what did I see? And yeah, sure. I guess there's some value to the distraction, but I'm much more of I'd much rather have an active experience in a movie, and not know than just be like, oh, this is where you just sort of know this is like, what did I watch? And it was total comfort food. I'd never seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and so we had an out of town guest, and it seemed like an easy get, and it was like you just know everything you need to know by the first 5 minutes of the movie, which is fine. But like, I'm still shocked that there was she made a 25-year career out of that story. It's astounding. I know, right? Amazing.
I mean,
So
but yeah, it's a different thing. It's like, apples and oranges, whatever.
Well, this could be the sequel. I could see Nosferatu 2. Oh, sorry. That was
Rob, I'm just curious, and Lou as well. How much do you guys like find yourself thinking about current trends and trying to distinguish ourselves from that?
I think I used to think about that, but now I don't know what's cool or trendy or
Well, not to go with it, but like for me, I find myself like wanting to just inherently rebel against like whatever's going
I
on.
mean,
I don't think about that as much as I used to. I have to admit. I just kind of am like, what serves the
Oh, yeah.
story. I know that that's where you're
doing archetypal stuff though. Like you could, like for this movie, it's kind of like it's not the what, it's the how, that is maybe a large part of what it's about. For
I
something.
think, yeah, Jarin, I'm also a contrarian, so whatever
Yeah.
is everybody else,
you
I
punks.
don't want to do. Eh?
You punks.
And well, it's just like, well, I was, thinking about this lately because like right now, I feel like the most punk thing you can do is make a beautiful.
Yeah.
The most punk thing you can do is have craft because like so much, just like I was a jury on a film festival a few weeks ago, and there's like 8 movies, 6 of which are just like available light handheld, and I don't know if they're thinking that they're rebelling against something, but no, that's the mainstream. You know what I mean? And that
it's
just
it's
drives me.
nostalgia. It's nostalgia rebellion. It's
I don't
like,
know.
it's like what Dogma is 30 years later or something.
Yeah, now that's the status quo.
I know that when I started editing, how long ago was that? Well, basically, well, nearly 20 years ago. And it's like invisible editing was the old-fashioned thing that nobody wanted to do. It probably still is, but that's what I like. So, welcome.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also more tools in the toolbox now. You can do invisible, you can do conscious, you can do handheld, you can do dolly and crane. Like,
my job, if people are sitting there thinking, oh, the editing's really good, then I've failed. That's how I think.
Well, but a hard cut's good too, isn't it? Like it's just, if you save it.
If you're in the story and psychologically I want a hard cut because it's like I want people to go, yeah, sure. But I'm talking about, I want, my only goal is for people to be lost in the story and not think about any of the technical shit that's going on screen. Just be lost in it.
Which we don't always achieve, but
no, we don't.
But it's nice to try.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, nothing came, like I said, I was completely absorbed in the story. I would be interested though, if the next project that you decided to do had some idea that there was conscious, right? There was editing that was meant to be felt. Do you think you'd have a problem doing that? I mean, it's just, that's the story you're serving, right? I mean,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the, of course, it depends on the style of the movie, really. But I guess what I'm saying is I would never want to do anything purely to do it.
I mean, the script that I just wrote, I don't know if that will be what gets made, but there is a lot more edits in it, than in this, for example. And it's like, but yeah, like to Lou's point, hopefully it feels like you're on the psychological journey of the protagonist and not like, woo, 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 like.
I mean, I don't even know. There was a big deal like a year ago or whatever it was. There was a film that had a lot of dissolves in it, and everybody was like, "Oh, dissolves! We haven't seen those for ages," because they were very they were very frowned upon.
Sure.
When I first started, so I mean, I guess this
like anything. There's like zooms, and then they went away, and then they came back around Marlene, and then that's how you.
But you can use them or not. Like that's the thing is like you can do this film didn't scream zooms, right? Like some other project might. It's like, and I just think like that it's weird that they would stand out in one era of filmmaking or one era, like I don't even know, when they're still not in fashion, but they are usable. You can use them. Well, look, I could keep going, but I just want to thank you guys for a very lively conversation. All right. It was great to meet you guys. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Josh. Good luck editing this one.
Oh, it'll be a snap. Take care.
Thanks everyone for tuning in, and please go check out the very scary and the kind of amazing Nosferatu in theaters now. Make sure to like our videos, subscribe to the channel, let us know how you feel in the comments, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.